So, I am obsessed with biology, specifically evolutionary biology, and the cold vacuum that is our universe. What would animals look like out there? But before getting into any of that, an introduction is probably needed. Hey, I'm Lewis. If you look at the other things I have on here, they are all game-based, so this seems very random. So, who am I? Why should you listen to me? And why am I making this? I am an autistic non-binary animator and programmer. A biologist, astronomer, and smart person are all not on that list. I did work under a bio professor for a bit as a programmer, finishing abandoned projects, so I absorbed a bit, but I still just don't know what I'm talking about. Of course, all of my sources are linked in the description, and if I'm directly citing something, it will be here in the corner. Now, why am I making this? 2 reasons. This is a project for my astronomy class, and again, biology is awesome. One last thing that is very important. Obviously, all of these animals are very unrealistic. They are much more fun than functional. Okay. After all of that, let's make some animals. If we're going to figure out what an alien would look like, we need to know how we get from this to this. We aren't going to be talking about pre-unicellular organisms and the start of life. That's abiogenesis, and it's very complicated. But, just as a cool fun fact, we've seen the building blocks of life form in space. They're just all out there. For something to make a massive change, it needs change. Mutations are any change in an organism's heritable characteristics, in most cases DNA. When a cell gets copied, there are occasional errors. They come in many forms. Deletion, where part of an allele gets taken away. Duplication, part of the allele gets copied. Substitution, one part gets replaced with something else. Inversion, a part gets flipped. Insertion, a part of an allele gets put in a separate allele. And finally, translocation, when 2 alleles have parts swapped. Most are generally meaningless. On an average, people have about 200 mutations. And one fairly common mutation is lactase persistence. Most people start to have a negative response to milk after some time, but 35% of the world still produces lactase, allowing them to properly digest lactose after maturing. Our cells are constantly duplicating, and possibly mutating. But that changes only in the cells resulting from that original cell. So, instead of one of your cells getting mutated, let's say the sperm or egg gets mutated. That would mean that the mutation is across all of your DNA, and in every single cell. This still could do nothing, but might cause a much bigger change. These changes are called genotypic changes, as they're changes to the genes. But if enough of these add up, they bring a change to the phenotype, or the observable. A common concern is, if there's constant random changes, then why isn't everything just chaos? For once, that's surprisingly simple. The changes are random, but the selection isn't. Natural selection is, in my opinion, single-handedly the most important part of evolution. And, unlike most things, again, it's actually really simple. If a change is negative, it means that the organism has a lower chance of survival, so it has a lower chance of passing down its genetics through reproduction. But, if it's beneficial, it has an advantage on everything else, so a higher chance of reproducing. Sometimes things get in the way. A sudden change to the environment can heavily throw things off. This is called a disturbance. This can speed things up, slow things down, create wildly new selection pressures, or just fully kill a species. Or even just a million other things. It all really depends on the disturbance, and it's just another form of selection pressure at its core. We ourselves have done this, and the most obvious example is dogs. We've artificially selected for traits. To get something like a Chihuahua, we bred 2 smaller dogs, and that resulted in a smaller dog, and then we bred that with the smallest other dog, and then that just keeps going until we get a Chihuahua. The world is always changing, and what most would consider errors is what allows species to adapt. It's genuinely amazing. As organisms build up more and more changes to fit the selection pressures of their environment, they add up till they're nearly unrecognizable from what they used to be. All of this is incredibly blurry. All of these terms we have are just terms. They describe reality, but they aren't reality, because nature does what it wants to. So it's important to keep in mind, while all of these are generally accurate, there are slight outliers. A species, for example, is not a set-in-stone thing. It's an incredibly blurry line. Every single creature is a gradient. There's no set species. It's important to also remember that there is no end goal or perfect creature. When something changes to get better at one thing, it gets worse at others. All changes need to be useful to stick. My favorite example, and probably a slightly overused one, is the eye. The first stage was a small patch of light-sensitive cells. This can sense if there's light above it, and if there isn't, that could be a predator. Then after that patch gets a little divot, allowing for detection of different directions. Then the divot gets rounded and filled with liquid, so now the light direction is even more accurate. Then an iris forms, allowing for control over the light sensitivity. After all of that, a thin lens forms, focusing the light. All of these are on their own extremely useful, and so much so that we could still see them on animals today. There is so much more I could talk about with all of this, but I do think this is a good framework. So, where do we start? Space is incredibly vast, but I think for everything we're going to talk about today, we should probably choose somewhere close, and somewhere we know life could possibly exist. So, let's check our neighbors. Hi, I'm in space now. Mars, the red planet. A cold, rust-covered terrestrial planet. Could life live there? Actually, possibly, but it's nearly certain to not have it currently, and it's pretty much impossible for it to form currently. Though, its past is an incredibly different story. Right now, Mars is an extremely harsh planet, at least compared to Earth, and it has a barely active core. The surface is covered in iron-rich soil, the rust causing the reddish hue. It's surprisingly useful for plant life, but unfortunately, it doesn't have the organic material needed to grow plants on its own. Gigantic canyons have formed, likely from the planet's watery past. There's decent volcanic activity, and the largest volcano in our solar system. Though, it's all surprisingly similar to the dry areas on Earth. The planet can get as cold as -225 degrees Fahrenheit, with a high of only 70. The extreme winds pick up soil, causing horrid dust storms, and the atmosphere, which is made of mostly carbon dioxide and nitrogen, barely even helps. It's extremely thin, holding so little heat that liquid water is currently impossible. But that's not the story long ago. Ancient Mars was very similar to Earth. It even had tectonic activity, though there was likely a lot less water, and it was still probably cooler. But this is certainly something we can work with. Before we start, I would like to just really quickly once again preface, this part is entirely speculative, and mostly for fun. Even on ancient Mars, there would be far less life. So, something would need to be able to do a whole lot with a little. Therefore, I thought we should just get rid of the middle. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll just show you. This is my creature. I call him Frederick, or the walking carrot. Why? Because I suck at naming things. That's it. Frederick is far more plant-like. It isn't a plant, as it simply just moves too much to be one, but it definitely acts like one. It's visibly similar to carrots, and not for no reason. Carrots do really well in lower temperatures, and so would this. Though, even with this strength, the cold may be too much. So, when needed, Frederick is able to burrow into the ground, with only its leaves exposed. This is a way to conserve heat, of course, but also a way to avoid the harsh weather, and even a way to feed. Just like any other plant, its roots dig deep into the soil, absorbing the nutrients. But with the less life, the soil is far less useful. So, if an area dries up or runs out of useful material, Frederick can simply pop out and walk somewhere else. Frederick spends most of its time under the ground, so as a result, eyesight really wasn't needed. When in search, he finds land by simply feeling for it. He goes in a direction till he finds land. It's not the best, but it's good enough. After finding the new fertile ground, he begins feeding. Every few feeding cycles, he begins to bloom, releasing seeds into the nearby area. Then, when the area is useless, Frederick and any new Fredericks get up and search again. Unfortunately, we know a decent bit less about Venus than Mars. But we still know a lot. Venus is far, far, far hotter than Earth. Even though it's not the closest planet to the Sun, it's still the hottest. Lows of only 86 degrees, but highs of 150 degrees Fahrenheit. The surface is covered in mountains and volcanoes, though Venus seems to no longer have much of any volcanic activity, and basically no tectonic activity. Even with that, it still gets worse. Horrible winds, clouds of sulfuric acid, and it holds immense ultraviolet radiation. Life is nearly impossible. Some scientists do think that some microbes could exist using the sulfur on the planet to shield themselves from the ultraviolet radiation, though it's still very unlikely. Even with that, I have one concept that has a slight chance of surviving. It gets far colder higher up. So what if an animal never stopped flying? This is the kite bird. This little guy is very similar to most birds. But the main difference is it never stops flying. It's constantly at extremely high altitudes, so it can stay cool. It still needs to sleep though, so when the wind starts, it stops flying. Its wings are huge and wide like a paper airplane. The winds aren't constant, so it can fly on its own, but when the wind is strong enough, it simply sits back and lets itself get carried. This gives it the perfect chance to rest. Because they never stop flying, they don't have legs, as they simply just don't need them. They subsist entirely sulfuric acid in the clouds, and don't get hurt by it. Their skin is more similar to metal than any other animal's body. And inside the body, the sulfuric acid breaks down into water and sulfur trioxide, the latter being disposed of. Okay, I'm out of space now. Again, for the final time, these animals were all very unrealistic. But I still love them. They were more about just giving fun ideas. I apologize that I keep reiterating it. I just think it's very important to make very clear. But we also got to learn about the amazing and extremely dangerous environments of our neighbors. So I think this was worth it. I also spent a lot of time on this. So I obviously think this was worth it. I probably will never do a science video again, or at least if I do, it'll be very rare, and probably mixed into something like a video about coffee. But if you enjoyed this style, I have a ton of other videos about game design and other things. Currently, all I have up on my channel is this video, a video about the issue with current Minecraft, a video playing a horror game with my brother, and a video about how I cheated in my friend's tournament. But down the line, I will have a lot more stuff on game design. So, with all of that, I would like to apologize to the people in the classroom who are listening to me talk about my YouTube channel. This video is also going up on YouTube, so that's why I'm talking about this in the outro. I was going to make 2 versions of it, but I thought it was funnier if I just left this in without any context until now. So I am. And also, have a good rest of your night, day, or whatever time it is. Thank you.